So continuing with the examples, another example from this period, so the late 1880s, is The Favorite Poet by Sir Lawrence Alma-Tadema. Many artists from continental Europe actually moved to Britain and had very good careers there, and in a moment you'll see two more names of foreign artists who were very popular and very successful in Britain. Lawrence Alma-Tadema was Belgian, but he actually relocated to Britain and became one of the most admired neoclassical painters in this antiquarian style. For example, he would go to the British Museum with his sketchbook and sketch everything he could find. So if you look at the reality depicted in his paintings, like the kind of furniture, the kind of clothes, the kinds of decorations, if you have any works of art, like here there is some sort of relief at the back, so some sort of sculpted decoration. We have the scrolls, so the books that the women are reading. We have the marble, very competently depicted. You may be sure that these things are as realistic and as true to historical reality as possible. But at the same time, these are Victorians in togas. So we have women from a wealthy section of the society enjoying leisure and reading poetry. This is something you might really expect some Victorian women to do, or some interest that could be seen as ladylike and appropriate to the women from the leisure class. For example, reading poetry. So this is really the kind of art that only takes historical costume to talk about contemporary issues. Another example of historical costume used to talk about contemporary issues in the Victorian period is taking the inspiration from British history. The title is "And When Did You Last See Your Father?" by William Frederick Yeats. You do not have to really know all those names of the artists, but it makes it easier to browse, to Google if you'd like to explore a bit more. So as you can see, this is the 17th century reality, the time of the Civil War between the armies of King Charles II and the Roundheads of Oliver Cromwell. So this is the time of the Civil War, and we have a group of people gathered in the interior of what looks like a manor house, a wealthy residence. We have the family of the owner of this residence. So there is a woman and some children, including this beautiful blonde-haired boy dressed in blue costume standing in the very center of the painting. And he is being interrogated by the Puritan army, by the Roundheads, by the army of Oliver Cromwell. So we have the soldier, we have the interrogator who apparently just asked the question, and we have a Protestant minister wearing this tall hat. And the question being asked, of course, is the title of the painting. And when did you last see your father? So what we have is a potentially probable story, like a little tale. This is a narrative painting, so it tells a story. Victorian paintings can be read like short stories or poems, because they, more often than not, they tell a story. So this story is set in the times of the Civil War, and we have the Roundhead army taking over some manor house of an aristocrat who is probably the supporter of the king, as we can judge by the costumes of the family members. Something borrowed from Anthony van Dyck's paintings, basically. And this little boy is asked the question about the whereabouts of his father. And does he know the answer? Should he tell it if he knows? So we have a moral story, really. Like, we can assume the boy knows where the father is, but he is such an innocent, angelic child that probably he had never lied in his life. Should he tell his first lie or protect his father? So, it is a historical tale, but at the same time, it's full of Victorian values, the innocence of children, some artistic elements here. So the allusions to Van Dyck, the allusion to a very famous child portrait by Thomas Gainsborough from the 18th century called The Blue Boy. That is probably why this little child is dressed in blue, because the blue boy was like the epitome of an English child, an English boy who would grow up to be a gentleman later. The original blue boy is slightly older than this little child here, but I think the color is not coincidental. So we have at the same time a historical tale and a tale of Victorian morality, like what is more important, telling the truth or protecting your family? We do not really know the answer here. This is really why this painting is so interesting. And the last one here is John William Waterhouse. So late Victorian artist, much inspired by the Pre-Raphaelites. He was not a member of the group. We'll talk about the Pre-Raphaelites later on. But he was inspired by their style and especially by their idealized vision of the Middle Ages. If you remember the Battle of the Styles and the Neo-Gothic style in the 19th century becoming so popular, this is not only in architecture. This is also in the graphic arts. So the Victorians, around the middle of the century especially, had a very idealized view of the medieval period. This was supposed to be the period before anything connected with technological progress started, and all the problems with industrialization, the urbanization. This was the moment when there was no mass production, when there were no factories, when people basically were at peace with the world, with God, with their work. This was the time of chivalry, of knights and ladies in the tower. So we have poetry, we have painting, and actually this painting illustrates a poem by Lord Tennyson, which tells a story of a minor character from the Arthurian legends. So the legends of King Arthur, one of the great national heroes, absolutely idolized in the 19th century. But this story is about a woman, about an enchanted princess locked in a tower, and she cannot leave the tower because if she dares to leave the tower, she will die. The curse will be released, and very soon she will succumb to some sort of illness and die. But if you know the poem, if you do not know the poem, absolutely go ahead and read it. It's short and it's very interesting, it's beautiful, it's very Victorian, it's very Arthurian. It tells a lot about the Victorian ideal of femininity, and of course it inspired a lot of art including this very famous painting by John William Waterhouse. So what we have is a woman actually not sitting in her tower. Many renditions of this story present her sitting in the tower, but here she's not. She left the tower because she fell in love. She saw Sir Lancelot, the perfect knight from the Arthurian cycle. She saw him through the window, and of course this released the curse. She decided to float downstream to Camelot. She took the tapestry that she was making, so this very rich looking fabric is the tapestry that she was weaving, and we have this beautiful young and very ill looking woman on the verge of death. And this is something that, of course, is a literary illustration, is a medieval fantasy, but is so Victorian that there is only one more candidate to be a more Victorian heroine for painters. And this would be Shakespeare's Ophelia from Hamlet. Why were they so attractive? Because they were young, they were dying, they were on the verge of femininity. So these were young women discovering love, discovering sexual attraction, and being punished for it almost immediately, either with this mysterious curse or with insanity that caused Ophelia to drown herself, either deliberately or accidentally. So we have this combination of a beautiful, young, rich lady growing up, becoming a woman, and dying. You can't get more Victorian than that. So you may want to Google the title The Lady of Shalott and see a lot more paintings by different artists. Not all of them British actually, some of them were continental. Or to Google the Victorian images of Ophelia, also by British and continental artists. We'll talk a little bit more about Ophelia when we talk about the Pre-Raphaelite, but let's move on to other academic artists. So I promise you two names of the foreign artists who had very good careers in Britain, and one was German. His name was Franz Xaver Winterhalter, and he was a portraitist who specialized in glamorous portraits of the crowned heads of Europe. So, of course, he caught the attention of Queen Victoria. He worked for her many times, producing all kinds of portraits of Queen Victoria herself and Prince Albert and other members of their family and court. But he sometimes produced a bit more complex paintings than, let's say, straightforward portraiture, which was quite flattering. The Queen always looks very beautiful there. She wasn't that beautiful. If you look at her photographs, she wasn't really the beauty queen, but Winterhalter knew how to flatter his sitters. And the one I would like to show to you is entitled The 1st of May, 1851. And if you think what happened on this day, actually three things happened, and they are illustrated in this painting. One of these things is the birthday, the first birthday of the little boy that Victoria is holding in her arms. This is one of her sons, Prince Arthur. One of her younger sons, Prince Arthur. He turned 1 on this day. Also, this is the 81st birthday of the great national hero, the old man that you can also see in this painting, and who for most Victorians would be immediately recognizable by his very characteristic profile. This is the Duke of Wellington, the great military commander who defeated Napoleon at Waterloo, who also had a splendid political career as the leader of the Conservative Party. He was Prime Minister before Victoria's accession, but he was also asked by Victoria to be the godfather to her young son. They shared the same Christian name, Arthur. This is like a double birthday of the old man and the baby. And also, if you look at the background, you can see, I hope you can recognize it now, the Crystal Palace, the main building of the Great Exhibition, which opened on the 1st of May 1851. So this is the third thing. And if you look at Prince Albert standing behind Victoria, he holds in his hands the plans for the building, because the very idea of the Great Exhibition was his. And this was his major success. So what we have are 3 historical events happening on the same day and involving the royal family. But if you look at the composition of this painting, there is more than just realism. You see a man slightly in the background, a woman holding a baby, and an older man giving a gift to the baby. What does it remind you of? I hope you guessed already. This is the scene of the Epiphany, of the 3 wise men or 3 kings giving gifts to baby Jesus. So here, of course, Britain is a Protestant country, so you wouldn't really have the cult of saints so much, but this painting combines religious imagery with the royal family, with the modern royal family. So the royal family is not only the model family, it is also the object of veneration, the object of almost religious worship. The Queen with the baby, it's not even the Prince of Wales, it's one of her younger sons, but he is in appropriate age, I would say. The great military hero, so a patriotic figure, the image of the Queen and Prince Albert as a model marriage, Prince Albert as an involved royal who is involved in the Great Exhibition. So the layers of symbolism here are very, very interesting. And the other foreign artist is James Tissot. His given name was Jacques Tissot. He was French, but he moved to Britain and had a very good career in Britain. And he became a kind of chronicler of the lives of the rich and fashionable people of the Bustle period. So if you remember our discussion of fashion, if you want to see good examples of Bustle dresses in paint, Google James Tissot. So here we have one of his works called The Ball on Shipboard, showing fashionable people enjoying the pleasures of life. So there is a yacht and they have a ball there. They are walking on deck of the boat. If you look closer or see a better resolution of this painting, you can see that in the background some people are dancing, some people are sitting and having conversations. They are all, especially women, they are all very fashionably dressed in the latest fashions. If you look closely, you'll see that some of the ladies wear identical dresses. And this has been a little bit of a mystery why Tissot decided to include such images. Is it supposed to mean something? Are these young women supposed to be twin sisters or close friends who would use the same atelier, the same fashion studio? Or is it supposed to be some sort of ironical sarcastic comment on the nature of fashion, that people want to look unique and they end up looking identical. So we do not know, but it is a very realistic painting showing realistically rendered humans and clothes and other things, but there is a little secret here. As far as the genre paintings go, so the paintings showing contemporary life in a realistic manner, some more examples. For example, Henry Alexander Bowler, The Doubt. Can these dry bones live? We have a young woman, clearly middle-class woman, fashionably dressed, standing in the spring in the middle of a cemetery. So she rests her hands on a grave, and we can imagine that she has some sort of religious doubts, or she thinks whether or not resurrection of the dead is possible. And again, if you look for details, you will find a lot of interesting things. So if you look at the name of the person who's buried in this grave, if you look at all kinds of little things added to the painting, for example, on this kind of flat gravestone, there is an acorn. There is a kind of seed of this tree sprouting a little spring. So it's like nature renewing itself, nature reviving itself. There is a tiny little blue butterfly, which traditionally in paintings was associated with the soul. So is it supposed to mean some sort of hope, some sort of reassurance that because nature revives itself in the spring, the human soul can also be revived? Another interesting Victorian painting showing a life of middle-class people. Charles West Cope, Life Well Spent. Even the title is so symbolic. So what would be the life well spent for a young woman from the middle class? Of course, become a wife and mother. So she is shown in an interior of a middle-class wealthy home, and she is surrounded by her children. As you can see, 4 of the children here, 2 boys, 1 girl and 1 baby in the kind of bed, basket bed on the floor. And again, lots of details that can be analyzed separately. There is a religious image of Christ the Good Shepherd in the background. The woman is involved in very many activities at the same time. She seems to be reading a book, she seems to be knitting, she seems to be talking to her children, but especially the boys. The other child is also a boy, but he's slightly younger, so he has this kind of baby, toddler clothes. So the most attention of the mother is paid to the eldest son. It looks like she's either admonishing him or perhaps checking whether he learned his lesson. And the little girl is learning to be like the mother. She's learning to multitask, if you look at this. She's reading and minding the baby at the same moment. So it's like the girl learning already. So in, I don't know, 10 or 12 years time, she will become just like her mother. She will marry young and start producing babies. And this is life well spent, rather than do something stupid, like, I don't know, higher education perhaps. So realistically rendered images of daily life, either inside the homes or outside the homes, We have two more paintings showing more, let's say, broad scenes in the landscape. One, William Powell Frith, the Derby Day. As you can see, this is the day of the horse races, and we have a crowd of people. It would be really a good idea to look up this painting and see the details in close-up, because this is like a panorama of the entire Victorian society, and this was something of a specialty for William Powell Frith. He would show crowded scenes, like a scene on the beach, with people just picnicking and walking and enjoying the day. The scene at the railway station, or like here, the scene at the horse races. So people from different walks of life, different social classes, different reasons why they came here, mixing together. So the society shown together. Another one, William Dyce, Pegwell Bay, a recollection of October 5th, 1858. A family outing on a holiday to the beach. As you can see, what would people do at the beach? They would basically walk and enjoy the day. And you can see some the women in the background, who are the family of the painter, collecting something. And actually, Pegwell Bay was quite famous for fossils. So this shows you that this is not just some silly excursion. This is almost a kind of expedition, a scientific expedition to look for the fossils. Two more images, we'll talk about them in a little moment. I think that's the best idea to do, because we are slightly running out of time.